write a short note on the prologue in Agamemnon. In the prologue, we find that the speech of a watchman which sets the gloomy and tense mood that will be maintained throughout the play. The play opens with a watchman standing on the roof of the place. He explains that Clytemnestra has ordered him to give a look out each night for the light from a series of beacons, first that will signal the long-awaited fall of Troy. He has carried out his duty faithfully for several years already and is getting demoralized. Suddenly he observes a beacon building in the distance and realizes that the war is over. The watchman is excited for a moment by the happy thought that his long vigil is ended and that his king will finally return home, but remarks that the walls of the place could tell the story if they were able to speak. The watchman determines to remain silent. He will be satisfied to welcome his beloved king home again. He goes out to tell the news to Clytemnestra. There is skillful artistry, arbitrary in this powerful opening, and full use is made of dramatic irony. Moreover, the watchman has been made into a real man, instead of a mechanical giver of information. His ambiguous reaction and brooding thoughts are genuine in the circumstances. They immediately arouse the interest of the audience and give added poignancy to his guarded comments. Why does Agamemnon sacrifice his daughter? In the play Agamemnon, we come to know from the narration of the chorus about the prophet Calchas' demand for the sacrifice of Agamemnon's daughters, Iphigenia, and the awful dilemma which then confronted Agamemnon. The Greeks suddenly came to a standstill. Calchas suggests that a sacrifice was absolutely necessary to propitiate the angry goddess. The fleet could not move, and to add to the misery of Greeks, there were famine and weariness. Culture said that the blood of Iphigenia, the daughters of Agamemnon, would alone appease the goddess. Agamemnon was faced with a terrible crisis. The sacrifice his own daughters was unimaginable. On the other hand, he felt greatly for his country. The lawless bloodshed of which Agamemnon will be guilty if he kills his daughters is exactly parallel to the lawless bloodshed of which he will be guilty if he goes on with his war for a wanton woman. But he must finally submit to necessity. He felt more in concern with the glory of the Greeks. The Greek chief cared for his or her own interest more and did. What reason does Clytemnestra give for the murder of Agamemnon? It was it was Clytemnestra who had arranged for beacon light at the important places between Troy and Greece so that she might make active preparation for the assassination of Agamemnon immediately on his arrival. Clytemnestra was deeply hurt when her husband Agamemnon has treacherously taken away Iphigenia and sacrificed her. Then she was secretly meditating revenge during Agamemnon's long 10 years absence in the place. When Clytemnestra slew her husband, she was avenging not her daughter alone, but thousands of the Greeks and the Trojans, who had to die most unwillingly to satisfy the humor and vagary of Agamemnon. Her love for her daughter Iphigenia was transformed into bitter and amicably hatred for her husband. The hatred was turned into revenge. Clytemnestra insists that the murder of Agamemnon was justified partly because of the sacrifice of Iphigenia and his uh, infidelity with Cassandra and with other women while at Troy. and also because she has acted as an agent of the gods and helped to fulfill the curse on the house of Atreus. So it is very difficult to isolate one particular motive, which leads Clytemnestra to her crime. Why does Cassandra call Apollo her destroyer? After racing in front of the place of Agamemnon, the house of Atreus, Cassandra steps down from the uh, chariot and cries, cries out in despair that Apollo has destroyed her. She said that once she rejected the sudden advance of Apollo and was punished by him with the gift of prophecy. Now she is able to foretell the future, but Apollo's curse prevents anyone from believing her prophecies. The burden of being unable, unable to communicate her vision is more painful than she can endure. As she goes on lamenting, Cassandra enters into a prophetic asceticism. She recounts that she recounts the whole story of the curse on the house of Atreus. The elders are able to understand that, recognize that she is telling the truth. But then Apollo's curse takes effect. Cassandra is horrified by the vision of sin and bloodshed. She tries to tell the elders that Clytemnestra is about to murder Agamemnon. But they misunderstand and accuse excesses her of lying. Cassandra forces no hope for reconciliation, reconciliation or an end of the curse, and she accepts her own fate and death with dignity. This is the reason for which Cassandra called Apollo her destroyer. Why is the glorious hymn to Zeus so significant in Agamemnon? The glorious hymn to Zeus is very significant in Agamemnon because in his hymn to Zeus, aeschylus deliberately brings to our mind the old cycle of cosmogonical myth, which makes Zeus a new comer among gods, all of whom conquered by violence. In Agamemnon, it is the wisdom rather than the absolute power of Zeus that is set before us. It is Zeus who has set man on the road that leads to wisdom. Thought it is a hard road, for knowledge comes only out of suffering, and the blessings of heaven come only by violence. That is why Agamemnon and Menelaus in Orestria invoked Zeus and Apollo for justice and revenge. In Agamemnon, we notice that Agamemnon was morally errant because he was as in the surrogate of Zeus. Artemis, on the other hand, avenged Iphigenia's sacrifice. Violence would breed violence and demanded inexorable justice. Orestes killed his mothers and her paramour to avenge uh, his father. It was at the behest of Apollo that Orestes had slain his mother. On the other hand, Clytemnestra hated Agamemnon mainly for the sacrifice of their daughter, and her hatred was confirmed when she saw that her husband had brought home a concubine. And finally, she killed Agamemnon. Agamemnon crossed the bounds of morality by bringing Cassandra as his mist and justice have done to him through the killing of him. We saw Agamemnon in the play in double aspect, first as the minister of justice carrying out a divine mission, and then as the blind and reckless Mati, guilty of hubris. So it is made clear to us that to achieve Dictius avails himself of guilty human passion. This is a preciously what Zeus is doing, and Agamemnon's character is relevant only to his extent that if Agamemnon's son profess to be not the sort of man to kill his daughter, he will perforce abandon the missions, and justice will not be done on Paris, the prince of Troy. Indeed, the lawless bloodshed of which Agamemnon is guilty as he kills his daughter is exactly parallel to the lawless bloodshed of which he is guilty as he goes on with war to destroy Troy for a wanted woman. What is the real cause of Troy destruction and why? There is the legend of the house of Atreus, which is the background of Oresteus trilogy, and Agamemnon is one of them. The legend should be narrated here to find out the real cause of the destruction of Troy. Atreus had sons. Atreus had two sons, Agamemnon and Menelaus, who married two sisters, namely Clytemnestra and Helen, respectively. Paris, the stringly handsome prince of Troy, visited the court of Menelaus and was accorded a warm hospitality. He once took advantage of the absence of the host and eloped with Helen. The whole of the Greece was shocked because Helen, sister of Clytemnestra and the most beautiful woman of the world and the wife of Menelaus, devastated her husband to go with Paris to Troy. And also he is the dignity of whole of Greece. The princess of Greece relate under the leadership of Agamemnon to avenge the grieving wrong. A mighty fleet sailed for Troy, and suddenly it stopped at Aulis. Celsus the soothsayer said the Artemis was displaced, and that is why ships could not move. The wind would be favorable again only when Agamemnon's daughter Iphigenia was sacrificed at the altar of God. Then Agamemnon consented to sacrifice his daughter after a painful inner struggle. As she was sacrificed, the goddess was and the ships processed uninterrupted. The Battle of Troy continued for young 10 years, and ultimately Troy was destroyed. The Greeks distracted the Trojan. Agamemnon crossed the bounds of morality by bringing Cassandra, as his mist and justice have turned to him through the killing of him. We saw Agamemnon in the play in a double aspect. First, as the minister of justice carrying out a divine mission, and then as the blind and restless Mati, guilty of hubris. So it is made clear to us that the achieves die, Jesus avails himself of guilty human passion. This is precisely what Jesus is doing, and Agamemnon's character is relevant only to his extent that if Agamemnon's son proves to be not the sort of man to kill his daughter, he will perforce abandon the mission, and justice will not be done on Paris, the prince of Troy. Indeed, the lawless bloodshed